Hi, Facebook land. This is Catherine Blake. I am a certified divorce coach, and I want to welcome you to our divorce program. This is our fourth show in a series, so if you ever want to look back on some of the other topics that we've covered, we spoke to Heather Rogers about real estate. We spoke to Kelly McGuire about what the legal process is and the legal system and how to get through your divorce. I did one on parenting, working with your children, getting through the divorce. And we have some people chiming in, which is awesome. And today, what we're focusing on is dealing with high conflict personalities as you get through your divorce. So this is a topic that's really near and dear to me. It's one I feel passionate about. The professionals that are working in the legal system, they often don't know how to diagnose somebody with a personality disorder. And if I had my way, I would be out there training all the attorneys because I just think that would just help keep families intact. It would save families money if they kind of knew that when you're working with somebody with a personality disorder, you need to have different behaviors in place and probably a whole different system. And I know myself, I have definitely dealt with narcissism in my past. And so this is a combination of me using my therapy and my coaching skills to help people because I know where you've been and I know how difficult this can be. And I just want to provide as much guidance and help as I can. I'm really passionate about that. I always say my ideal client is somebody who's been married for, 20, 30 years, and they're making a decision, a healthy decision to move on to healthier, better relationships and to free themselves of being imprisoned by living and parenting with somebody with a personality disorder. And that's not easy work. And so that's why I do what I do. So I do have some questions. One of the things that became very clear to me as I was talking to people online and even talking to some of my clients in my office, is that these stories are so complex. I think that's certainly a red flag that you're dealing with somebody who has a high conflict personality or personality disorder when the other person is telling their story and they're hyped up and they're breathless and their energy is just scattered and they're having a hard time even telling a cohesive story. Because they're dealing with somebody who's constantly pushing their buttons, questioning their sense of reality, questioning who they are. And it creates this. So if you find yourself in that state, when you're talking to your friends about your divorce story, it's a little bit of a telltale sign that you could possibly be dealing with somebody who has a personality disorder. So there are different personality disorders. I definitely want to recommend to you, Bill Eddy has a book out there called Splitting that helps guide people getting through divorce with these kind of people. But what I'm going to focus on today is narcissism. So I'm also want to put this out there that as I'm speaking and as I'm sharing examples, there might be some times when I use he and she. I'm not saying that in any sexist kind of way. There are more men that are narcissistic than women that have been diagnosed, but there are certainly women out there as well. So I just want you to know that. So I'm not meaning anything as I'm sharing these stories with you. So people ask, here's one question. What is narcissism? I suspect my soon-to-be ex has it, but I'm not sure. Sometimes he seems depressed and sometimes he seems anxious. So what I want people to know is that the word narcissism gets tossed around a lot right now out in the world and on all over social media. I want to say that part of that has something to do with kind of who's running our country, although, I'm not saying political things at all. But what has happened is more attention has been shifted to narcissism as a whole. So people tend to think that narcissism is just the stereotype, right? It's just the guy and he walks in and he's super confident and he's full of himself and he thinks he's better than everyone else. But what people often don't realize is that narcissism comes from a past abuse, okay? And though that might be the person's presentation, underneath of it all, there's this emptiness this hollow feeling, a feeling of shame, a feeling of I'm not good enough. So it's, it's not that they're faking, but all of this big grandiose ideation and thinking is to cover up that awful feeling inside. So when people come from dysfunctional backgrounds, they usually have one or two choices. One is they take the narc route, right? That's what we call it. And they go on to be narcissistic, as we're going to talk about more. Two is that they become an empath or a caregiver or a codependent, if you will. So those people deal with their dysfunction by wanting to fix it. They want to take care of people. They want to make people feel happy. They want to make people feel better. That was probably their role in their family. The narcissist does somewhat the opposite, because what they're doing is they're trying to cover up that feeling of I'm not good enough, and they deal with it in a cluster of behaviors that we're going to talk about. And these cluster of behaviors are really what allow us as professionals to be able to diagnose narcissism. So here, here's some of the things. Number one, they project, right? So if they're the people that, I'm not anxious, you're anxious. It's all you. You make me anxious, because they can't really be in touch with their internal feelings, because those feelings make them feel vulnerable and make them in touch with that sense of shame or that sense of not being good enough. So they literally project their internal feelings that don't feel well, I have people chiming in, onto other people. And they see it in other people, but they never actually see it in themselves. They often will even change reality if they have to, right? So maybe on Monday, I have some people chiming in, the husband tells the wife, I'm gonna walk the dog on Wednesday. They get to Wednesday, the husband forgets to walk the dog. The wife confronts him. Oh, there's that feeling of shame again. And he says, I never said that on Monday. What are you talking about? You're crazy, right? So it's not that they're not based in reality, but they will distort reality to do anything to avoid anybody touching that internal core, okay? There's an obsession with parts of themselves being better, right? It might be beauty, it might be intelligence, it might be sexual prowess, it might be their money, but they're sort of obsessed with this, whatever form it takes, that there's something about them that's better than everybody else in the world. They feel the rules of the road, kind of the way life goes, doesn't apply to them. There's actually been a case that came to my attention recently where there was a parent collecting child support and alimony, and at the same time going and committing welfare fraud, and not seeing any problem with that at all. Because though that might be a problem for other people, it's not a problem for the narcissist, right? They will do whatever they need to do, whether it's shortcuts, whether it's stepping on other people's toes to get to where they need to, because that's what they do. They don't need to follow the rules that everybody else has. Complete lack of empathy for others or ability to think of others as you're making decisions. Decisions are completely made for the narc. That's it. Nobody else. Parenting often becomes challenge because a narcissist, typically there's really poor boundaries, and it's hard for them to not see their children as extensions of their own needs. So what I see quite often in my office is the parent who insists that their child is either gifted or insists that their child has extreme special needs. Because what it means is, like, my children need special attention. They need something different beyond the norm of other children. So whether that's because they're so advanced and they're better, or it's because they have such special needs that makes that happen. But again, it's all about the narcissistic parent getting their needs met. It has nothing to do with the children. And that's really the hard part. Unable to tolerate hearing others' opinions of themselves. They will often cut out people who, again, make them in touch with that soft spot. Lack of insight into behavior. And always feeling like they're the victim. Okay, so I see this a lot. Even if the narcissistic person is the one who initiated the divorce, they will come out the other end of the divorce, hi everyone, and often say, my partner left me. They just left me, they up and left me, even if they're the ones who started the divorce process. They are always the victim. They're always being victimized by other people. They're never wrong. So as you can see, these are sort of the gross, not everybody has all of these symptoms, by the way, but this is sort of a snapshot of the typical behaviors we would see in somebody with that. So narcissism is going up. Somebody asked me that. Their latest research says it could be 10 to 20% of the population. I don't know why. My guess, part of it is the way we parent our kids. When I grew up in the 80s, our parents weren't necessarily overly concerned with how happy their children were. And I think that changed in the 90s. There was a big shift. And I think because of that, it started to create some different psychology in kids. I think social media, here I am talking to you because I'm trying to sell my business, give you information, all that. That's a form of narcissism, right? Here I am. All of our kids are taking selfies all day long. I'm sure that's not fantastic as far as narcissism goes. I also think that in our culture, there's a lot of value placed on narcissism. These people are charming. They're persuasive. They're often doing great in business. They're able to, convince people things. They're able to warm people up. And so there's a lot of value on those traits in our culture. So those are kind of my guesses as to why those rates are going up. Not entirely sure. So hope you guys are still with me. So now we're going to get into some more questions. I hope that kind of gives you a sense of what we're dealing with. So somebody writes, why does my narc ex always leave me feeling bad about myself? So again, sometimes I get these and I don't get all the information when people send me questions. So what I would want to know from this person is I would kind of want to know as a coach and a therapist, what is this person's own past history? Does this person, hold themselves in high regard? Was there any abuse in the background? What is their mental frame as they're, getting through their day? Because one of the things about dealing with narcissism is they like to make sure that their partners are kept in their place on some level, that they're not powerful. They're not powerful enough to leave the relationship. And I have seen people 3, 4, 5, 10 years post-divorce, and they're still kind of in this mindset. And so there's some articles that are coming out now about post-narc abuse syndrome. I think it is legitimately a real, true condition. And I think it impacts people, and it impacts people as they're moving on into their future relationships, unless they're able to do the healing. And the healing takes place here, okay? It takes place within you and nobody else. And what ends up happening is people get out of their marriages with a narcissist, but they often get hooked still. Sometimes, and I'm just going to share some stories I've heard. I just wish my ex-husband would realize how hard I'm working for our children as a single mom and just once would say thank you. I wish my ex would understand that he also was somewhat responsible for the demise of our marriage. I wish that my ex would be a better parent. I wish he would be more interactive and start hanging out with the kids more. And these wishes keep you hooked. Sometimes the narcissist wants to actually, the codependent or the empath wants to still take care of the narcissist post-divorce, right? So all these things keep you connected and leave you much more likely to get triggered and feel bad after you speak to the narc, okay? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about communication styles. So like I was saying, there's the narcissistic personality, that comes from dysfunction. There's also the empath codependent, and these people are attracted to each other like craziness, okay? Part of it is because they have dealt with the same things. They both come from dysfunction. They're both speaking the same language. And for somebody who's a codependent, they meet the narc and they're like, oh, I instantly know how to behave, right? My job is to take care of you. My job is to tell you how great you are. My job is to be in service to you, which is what a lot of people who are empathic and codependent do, right? So they automatically get attracted to the relationship because there's this sense of like, oh, this relationship feels good. I'm stepping into my caretaker role, which I'm really good at. I'm going to be comfortable in this relationship. It is literally like dynamite when these two people come together, right? Fireworks explode. So I always laugh and I tell people, I'm like, listen, I know myself. If I see that going on in the first meeting with a guy, I literally run out the door, because that's usually a sign that what's coming up is this is a relationship that feels way too much like something I know. It's too familiar, right? And I know that I can be attracted to that narc personality. So it's just something to think about. The narc loves the codependent because, you know, what the narcissist loves is like, this is somebody who's telling me how great I am. Love that. I love how this person makes me feel. It's not necessarily about loving that person, right? It's how that person makes me feel. That person helps me avoid that soft, sticky spot inside that I don't want anyone to know about. So, you know, I always say couples can heal from their past, but they can't do that without insight and empathy. And a narcissist doesn't really have either of those. So for the codependent, they often burn out. They feel like they're hitting their head against the wall. They don't feel like they're able to communicate their needs in the relationship. And they, you know, it revs up all their childhood trauma again, and they feel exposed and end up wanting to leave the relationship. So, you guys still with me? Are we still together? I know this is like a really tough conversation to talk about. So I am here if anybody has any questions too after I film this. Please send me, PM me. This is a big topic that we can certainly talk about more than once, okay? So somebody asked me, what is gaslighting? So gaslighting is a term that psychologists use. It actually came out from a play where a woman back in the day lived in a house. She meets this man, they fall in love, and he basically keeps turning the gas lights up and down. And she would say, did you see that? Did you see the lights went up and down? And he said, nope, don't see this. And he ends up literally driving her to her losing her mind. So gaslighting is, you know, there's many examples of this. I know I just shared the one with the anxiety, but it, you know, it could be the I never said that. You're crazy. You know, if the one partner says to the other partner, I'm feeling alone, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling whatever, and that partner turns around and says, you're nuts. You have no right to feel that way. Why would you feel that way? That doesn't even make sense. I haven't done that to you. It's gaslighting. The ultimate goal is that it makes the victim question their sense of reality. And this is what I mean by crazy making. You know, it's like, am I the crazy one? Am I the one getting this wrong? Am I misreading all this? Dealing with a narcissist, you start to doubt yourself big time. And that's what gaslighting is. And again, like to go back to that other question with the woman who's still feeling bad talking to her ex, well, maybe you're still being gaslighted. You know, maybe on some level, you don't even know what the gaslighting is, and you need some education around how to deal with that. Okay. So my narcissistic ex argues with me about everything in regards to our parenting. What can I do? Okay, so this is somebody who is post-divorce. And I always recommend to people, per the Eddie book, BIF communication. So it's brief, it's informative, it's friendly, and it's firm. And I always say 10 words or less. That's it. Okay, because there is not a whole lot, hopefully, that divorced parents really truly need to communicate. So you keep it just about the business. What time's pickup, what time's drop off? I spent $160 on hockey equipment today, and that's it. The less communication, the better. There are programs like our Family Wizard and Talking Parents that actually help people. I highly recommend Talking Parents. It's a free program, so that it also helps you make sure that you're not getting baited, right? The other thing I say to people, when you're dealing with narcissism, they always want to be in control and they always want to feel like they have power. I mean, that's the reality. That's never going to go away, ever. So I will encourage, for example, I had a conversation with the mom 2 weeks ago, and she's like, I really want to go out, but it's my time. It's my time with the kids. What do you think I should do? And I said, hire a babysitter. Don't ask your ex, because your ex is just going to say no, even if he's sitting home doing nothing, because it's a way of having control. And so part of breaking free from the getting hooked and from the cycle and from the abuse is to try to find ways to not put yourself in a position of relying or in a position where your ex can have any kind of power over you, because the narc ex will use that, right? Unless you have first right of refusal in your divorce agreement, that's totally different. So don't listen to that. But if you don't have that, as much as possible, rely on family, rely on friends, rely on babysitters. Try to be as independent, not relying on your ex as you can, okay? Because every time you open yourself up like that, you're more at risk of hearing no and being really frustrated. So, let's see. I could go on and on and on. So I don't know if I'm going to get to everything. Let's see. Okay, my ex is poisoning the kids against me. They now say that they hate my family and refuse to stay with me. I was the primary caretaker pre-divorce. Divorce poisoning is actually a form of abuse. It's a legitimate thing. There are specialists out there. I think her name is Diana Pell. She's here in Massachusetts who can provide an evaluation for you. So what I tell the parent who is not poisoning is I congratulate them for taking the high road, and I teach them on how to educate their children and also how to help the children set limits with the other parent if they're old enough to do that. So in order to prove divorce poisoning in court, this is kind of the hard thing, is that you have to almost prove and have evidence that it's working, right? So if you have a child who loves mom, loves her family, loves grandpa, grandma, and all of a sudden switches and says, I don't want to be here, I hate you, I hate all of you, refusing to talk to you, there has to be that second step, unfortunately, to prove it in court. It's not an easy thing to prove, but there are specialists out there, and honestly, it's the worst case of child abuse that's out there. It's horrible, and it has lifelong consequences. So again, if you guys have more questions, please PM me, and I can work with you or also get you to the specialist that can help you. Okay, so I don't want to rush too much. All right, can a personality disorder get better in individual therapy? I will tell you. Why do I do this work? Because the narcissistic parent never comes to divorce coaching because they don't do anything wrong. They hardly ever end up in a therapy or a consultation room. And if they do, the minute they hear anything critical or anything less than positive, again, that inner core, they leave, or they blame the therapist, or they argue with the therapist. So the problem is the stats are not very good on therapy helping somebody with a narcissistic personality disorder. And in fact, they sometimes get worse when they're in therapy, because therapy kind of gives them a stage to act out their persona, right? Here I am, I'm charming dad, I'm great business owner, I'm lovely, I'm funny, I'm so sweet. I don't know why she wants to leave me. She's crazy. Why would she want to leave me? And some therapists get sucked into that, right? These are charming, persuasive kinds of people. The court system is also another stage for a narc to act everything out on. So actually, these kinds of systems don't help the personality disorder people. They make it worse. I think group therapy can help, and I'm talking long-term DBT therapy, but getting somebody with that diagnosis into such an intensive treatment, it's not easy, because they walk around feeling like they're fine. They're not the ones with the issue. Everybody else is. Let's see. So why don't the courts care? So I know I posted a post a couple weeks ago, and I said a swear, which sometimes I swear, and I know you guys don't like that. But I said the courts do not care if your soon-to-be ex is an asshole. They don't care. Courts look at divorce as a business transaction, and they're breaking up assets, and they're creating a parenting plan, and that both moms and dads should be involved. And on the surface, that kind of is how it should be, right? Kids should have access to both of their parents, even a narc parent they should have access to. But courts, do I think some attorneys understand personality disorders? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's some great attorneys out there who get it, and they try to help their clients and steer their clients in the best way possible. I think there's some attorneys that they see, the narc walk in and they go, woohoo, this is like, billable century. I'm going to be making tons of money off this guy, right? So you kind of, it's something to think about too as you're looking for your attorney. Do you have experience working with somebody with a personality disorder? I really need somebody with that kind of experience. You can ask that. So I hope that answers that question. I think for me, in my journey, and I'm very open about this with my clients, is I have to constantly remind myself to take the high road and to bite my tongue. Occasionally I get a text from my ex and I'm like, oh, there he goes again, oh my God. And I'm like, well, stop. I have to put my phone down and not respond. Because if I respond, I get sucked back into that dynamic again, right? And it's really, really hard not to. So much easier said than done, okay? The other hard part is when you're dealing with the ex and you know that things are off between your ex and your children. And you kind of have to tolerate dealing with that, and that is also really hard. That's a lot of the coaching I provide. So I always say support your children. If your children come back and go, hey, mom or dad, every time I say anything that disagrees with them, they yell at me, or they, or they're dismissive, or they called me a name. Certainly, as the parent listening to that story, you want to support your kids. You don't want them to question their sanity and their perspective, right? You don't want them to be gaslighted. So whatever they come to you and talk about, you certainly talk to them about it without throwing your ex under the bus, right? You certainly can't say that's because your dad's an asshole. That's not good. That's not a helpful answer. But you might say something like, yeah, sometimes daddy has a hard time dealing with differences of opinions. What do you think you could say to him that would help, right? If your child's old enough to do that. If they're little, it's a little different. And I think often what I'm coaching my clients on is, you know what? Your ex is not going to get better. Personality disorders actually get worse as people age. They don't get better. So your job is to sit back, be the best parent you can be to your children. The best parent, okay? Not the spoiling parent, the best kind of parent you can be, because relationships are reciprocal. And eventually your kids, and it might happen when they're 14, It might happen when they're 16, 18, 20, 25. They are going to get it. They're going to see all the things that you see, and they're going to manage it, okay? Because they know they have you. They know they have you to talk to. They know they have you to be their authentic, real selves with. You know, unfortunately, the partner who is the empathetic one or the codependent one, the one that the kids maybe feel more comfortable with, they're also going to act out more with that parent, right? And that can be really frustrating when you're the parent, the giving, codependent kind of parent, right? That child probably won't act out with the narc parent because they're too afraid that they'll get rejected if they disagree. They're too afraid that they'll anger that parent. They're too afraid that they'll make that parent feel bad, right? So hold on to your authentic, real, messy, sloppy roller coaster ride of a relationship with your children. Always be there for them. Model for them what it means to take the higher road, because it will pay off in the end. I promise, 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 promise that. Whether you call it karma, whether it's pulling on spirituality, whether it's talking to your friends and getting grounded again. I think when you're dealing with this kind of situation, self-care is so much more important than dealing with a garden variety divorce. It is. And it doesn't have to be something that costs money. You know, it could be walking in the woods with your dog. It could be meditating for 10 minutes a day. It could be waking up every morning and being like, how do I get myself in a good mindset today so that I don't get triggered and I don't feel angry? You know, it's not easy work. This is why I do what I do. I'm here for you guys. I know when I was going through my own divorce, my fear was that I was the crazy one. I was like, I'm so worried that people are not going to see my ex for who he is, that I'm going to look like the nutty one, that I'm the one who's all stressed out and all hypervigilant, right? And that was a big fear of mine. And it was pretty unfounded because everything, and at the end of the day, everything comes out, right? People are who they're going to be, and it happens. And you just kind of have to have a little bit of faith in that. So I am going to sign off. We have a lot of people here today, so thank you so much for taking your time to listen. I'm still not entirely sure what our next Facebook Live is going to be. If you guys have any ideas, if you have any questions, anybody, please, 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 please chime in, and we will try to get that covered for you. Okay? So have a good night. Stay strong. You're going to get through this. Love you guys. I love all my clients. I love doing what I do because I think I help people regain their sense of sanity, stop getting hooked by their exes, and they move on. They move on to better relationships that are healthy and good and whole, and where their emotional needs can get met. So please, I'm here. I'm in Andover, Mass. Certainly feel free to call me, and have a good night. Take care. Bye.